Hello everyone. As part of CDGC Data Governance journey, today we will look at curating assets with workflows. Our agenda today is to look at what is a workflow and why to use workflows. Look at prerequisites for configuring and working on workflows. Then we will see how to configure a workflow, how asset lifecycle changes with workflows, workflow notifications, workflow history and what it captures, and then we will give you a demo. Now let's look at what is a workflow. A workflow is a series of predetermined steps that an administrator can define for creating or modifying an object that CDGC ensures to be followed. Configuring a workflow ensures that the right people have the opportunity to provide input, challenge, and approve matters related to the object that is created or modified. These series of steps in a workflow ensures that objects are created in CDGC according to the data governance principles in your organization. Now let's look at prerequisites for workflows. For each type of workflow, we need to create the appropriate roles in IICS administrator. For each role, configure the following properties. For the asset creator or editor role, select the create or update permission for the asset type under metadata command center service. In this case, we have provided create and update permissions to the user role for the business term asset. For all workflow participants, select the participate in change approvals permission under data governance and catalog service. To create and modify workflows, select the manage workflow settings permission under metadata command center service and participate in change approvals permission under data governance and catalog service. Now let's look at how to configure a workflow. In metadata command center, go to the configurations page. In the configurations list, select workflows. To configure a new workflow, click the add icon. Then the following new workflow page will come up. Specify the following details. Name. Enter the event that triggers the workflow. The event name is a descriptor that identifies the activity for which the workflow should start. For example, to start a workflow, each time a user creates a business term asset, we can enter the event name as create business term. Event type. We need to select the type of event for which we want to configure the workflow. We can select one of the following options. Approval request for create. Select this if you want to create an asset. Approval request for change. Select this if you want to modify an asset, or we can choose both. Choosing both will trigger the same workflow when the asset specified is created or updated. Then we have the description for the workflow, then select assets section. Click the add icon to select the asset type for which the workflow applies. In the select asset type window, we can select the business or technical assets for which the workflow should start. To configure specific properties of the workflow, click Next to go to the Workflow tab. A graphical representation of the workflow appears. In a predetermined or predefined workflow, the steps of the workflow are already configured. You can modify the task details in each step. The tasks section displays the list of tasks that an administrator has configured for the workflow. To modify the details of a task, select the task from the tasks area. you can configure the following properties in the task details. Type displays the type of the task. Role, select the user role for the task. When you select a role here, only the users configured for the selected role can perform the task. Due in, enter the number of days or months for which the task is valid. Task action, specify the action that the workflow user must perform in this task. Lifecycle status, specify the value of the lifecycle field that applies to the asset when the workflow user performs the task. For example, if the workflow requires approval of creating an asset, you can configure the step to change the value of the lifecycle field from draft to published when the approver approves the asset. Finally, log for edits. Specify whether to log the asset for edits during the workflow. If you select yes, users must wait for the workflow to reach its terminal state before they can modify the asset. If you select no, users can modify the asset when the workflow is in progress. Now let's look at asset lifecycle changes with workflows. As part of the workflow, the asset can be in one of the following lifecycles: draft, in review, and published. Draft is when if the user creates or modifies the asset, then the life cycle of the asset will be in the draft state. In review is when the ticket is created and the workflow process begins. Then asset will be changed to in review from draft. As you can see, the life cycle of the asset is in review state for the whole process of submitting, approval, return, and resubmitted loop. Published. If the workflow ticket approval request is completed, then the life cycle value of the asset changes to published. Now the asset created or modified can be used in CDGC. Workflow notifications. Now let's look at under what scenarios the notifications are sent to the users working on workflows. When the event ticket is generated for the asset, which is created or modified, all stakeholders will receive email and flag notifications. For approval and edit asset instance tasks, stakeholders that are assigned to that particular task will only receive notifications. Once the asset is approved, all stakeholders will receive email and flag notifications. Now let's look at Workflow History tab. Workflow History tab captures all the changes made on the ticket, such as which actions are performed by which user, time of the action, and also the old values and new values. These details can be used for tracking or auditing the changes. Now let's look at a quick demo. As part of the demo, let's first look at the permissions required to work on workflows. For the asset create or editor role, select the create or update permission for the asset type under metadata command center service. In this case, we have provided create and update permissions to the user role for business term asset. For all workflow participants, select the participate in change approvals permission under data governance and catalog service. To create and modify workflows, select the manage workflow settings permission under metadata command center service, and also participate in change approvals permission under data governance and catalog service. Now that we are done with the prerequisites, let's look at how we can configure the workflows. To configure the workflows, log into metadata command center. Click on Configurations tab. From the dropdown, choose Workflows. For this instance, I'm using an existing workflow. The following workflow page will come up where we need to specify the following details such as name, enter the event that triggers the workflow, event type. We need to select the type of the event for which we want the workflows to be triggered. Example, we have two options here, approval request for create, approval request for change. We choose approval request for create when we want the workflow to be triggered when an asset is created. Approval request for change. We choose this if we want the workflow to be triggered when the changes have been made to an asset. We can choose both. Choosing both will trigger the same workflow when the asset specified is created or updated. Next is description. Enter a description for the workflow. Next comes select assets section. In the select asset section, we can specify to what type of assets this workflow applies to. Click on add icon to select the type of assets to which you can choose the the workflow applies to. In the select asset type window, we can select the business assets or the technical assets for which the workflow should start. For now, I have selected the business tab. To configure the specific properties of the workflow, click next, or you can actually click on the workflow tab itself. A graphical representation of the workflow appears in a predetermined workflow or predefined workflow. The steps of the workflow are already configured. You can modify the task details in each step. The tasks section displays the list of tasks that the administrator has configured for the workflow. To modify the details of a task, select the tasks from this task area. Now we have this approve and edit asset tasks as part of the workflow. Choosing the approve task, we have the task details specified here. So we have type of the task. For now, this is preset to the task which is selected. Role, we need to select the user role for the task. For this demo, I'm choosing governance administrator role to perform the approve task. Due in is where we specify the number of days or months for which the task is valid. Next comes task actions. We have three actions or field options for the user of the approved task to take based on the information in the ticket generated. Here we preset the lifecycle status of the asset for each action. Lock for edits currently is preset to yes, which will lock the asset during the workflows. Similarly, we have edit asset task. We see the type preset to edit asset. We need to select the user role for this task. For this demo, I'm choosing the same governance administrator role. And the task actions, as you can see, are discard and resubmit. We also have lock for edits as no, since this is an edit asset type task. Once these actions have been configured, tasks have been configured, we can click on save, and the workflow will be saved and created. Now that we are done with prerequisites and configuring a workflow, let's see the workflow in action. For this demo, consider a use case where a business analyst working on enriching the financial data sees the need for a term to be documented. The business analyst would come to CDGC and create a business term to document it. For this demo, I have already created a finance business term asset. We can see upon creation, the lifecycle status of the asset is set to draft state. As for the stakeholder roles, I have already assigned the users with the roles that are already specified when configuring the workflows. Kindly note, the workflow or ticket will not be generated if all the required stakeholders are not assigned to the asset. Now, to create the ticket and start the workflow process, click on the Publish button. A pop-up ticket window will appear where we need to specify the name of the ticket, description as to why we need the asset, severity, and urgency. Click Submit to start workflow and include other stakeholders of this asset. Okay. The ticket will be found under the Tickets tab of the asset or in Ticket Manager. Once the ticket has been generated, email notifications will be sent to all the stakeholders. The stakeholders will also receive the flag notifications. So you can see here, we have got the notifications. Let me pull up the email notifications as well. So this is an email I have received saying a workflow ticket is created where I am assigned as a stakeholder. And this is another email notification saying that the workflow ticket is assigned to me. As I can see, the task, the ticket, as well as the asset name in the email notification. Now, let's go to the ticket by clicking on the ticket name. So this will open the ticket page and we can see more details of the ticket, such as the ticket type, uh, to whom the current task is assigned to, the next tasks, description of the ticket, and changes section, which highlights all the changes made to the asset. Currently, we don't see any original value because this is a new object. We can also tag users who are not stakeholders for additional inputs under comments section. This will also send out email notifications to the tagged user. As we can see here, the task owner currently has three options to take this workflow forward, which is approve, reject, and return. Clicking on return will move the task to the edit asset instance state or task. While in edit asset task, we can make changes and the asset state is not locked. So now as current task owner, uh, which is governance administrator role, I will click on the finance asset to see what this asset is about. I look at the description, the title, all the attributes. I'll check if everything is okay. And if everything is okay, I'll hit on approve. This will publish the asset and everyone can see this business term. Let's say there are some changes that needs to be made on description or either on business term or on any other attributes. I can make a note here stating uh, the following. and I can click enter here. So now I will click on return. This will unlock the asset for the changes to be made. Since I am the only stakeholder and both the tasks have been assigned to the role governance administrator, uh, I will go ahead and make the changes. So let's refresh this page. So you can see now I have an option to edit the asset. So you can see now uh, I have been requested to make the following changes. Operations at the end instead of operation. So I will add the same and I'll save it. Now I'll come back to the asset and I'll resubmit it to the approval task owner. Now the task has been reassigned to me, and I'll check if all the changes made here are appropriate and everything looks fine. So now I'll go ahead and click on approve, which will publish the asset. Now the history, coming to the history tab of the ticket, we can see all the changes and actions that have been made as part of the ticket. So actions, the old value, the new value, and who changed, who made the changes, as well as on what time the updates have been made on. So if I refresh the asset, the lifecycle changes to published. Now everyone can see, everyone in CDGC can see this asset. Now the process is same when you edit an asset. So let's say I make these changes and I click on publish. So since the stakeholders are now been assigned, it will not go ahead, but the changes that I wanted to show is the lifecycle state here. You have an option to switch between published and to switch to draft. This option is only available for the stakeholders. Now, since the asset has been published, all the stakeholders will receive the notifications stating the same. Let me pull up the notification, for example. So this is the notification that the stakeholders will receive stating the workflow ticket is resolved where you are a stakeholder. It will list the ticket type as well as the asset name. Now we're done with the demo. One important thing to note here is bulk import auto publishes the assets which are imported. So when we bulk import the assets, the bulk import task will auto publish the assets. This is an intended behavior. We are also currently working on enabling the workflows for the bulk import feature. Summary. If you need any more information, kindly refer to the following KB articles. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.